Sorry, I got to do pronunciation. Umeå is the name of the university.
Umeå.
Umeå.
Yeah.
Umeå.
If you want to sound a bit more local, you could even say Umeå University. If you, Daniel, if you want to come across as a bit like...
I would never presume. Hello and welcome to Because Language, a show about linguistics, the science of language. My name's Daniel Midgley. Let's meet the team. It's Ben Ainsley. Ben, we're recording this on the election day for Australia. Yes. And Laura on our Discord has mentioned democracy sausage. Ben, did you have a democracy sausage today? And maybe explain?
My local polling place, which is to say primary school, because that's overwhelmingly where it happens in Australia, had run out of democracy sausage sizzle sausages by the time that I got there. But I, as a clutch backup play, I swung past a Bunnings to feel like I got my sausage. Yeah.
Okay.
Nice.
So, do we know? Should we explain what democracy sausage is?
Basically, it's sausage. It's a hot dog. There's really no sort of grander explanation than that. It is a sausage in a very cheap bun, usually with some fried onions and then your choice of condiments that you have applied to it. And it is available to you after you vote. And it's usually run by the school parents and carers association. So the money goes to the school and they buy new gym equipment or something like that.
But it does contribute to a festive atmosphere.
Yeah.
Voting in Australia, it happens on a Saturday. It's compulsory, so everybody has to do it, so you see everybody.
I'm bizarre. There are very few things that I'm proud of as an Australian, but the way we do elections is a thing that I am incredibly proud of.
Yeah.
We fucking rule at at voting. It's so good. We've got preferential voting. It's always on a Saturday. It's all we smash voting in Australia. We were lucky, I think. We did it last. That's the reality, right? Is after everyone had fucked up and we had realized globally that wow, first past the post voting fucking terrible. And so when Australia started doing it, we were like, well, what if we fixed all those mistakes?
We did.
No, it is very good.
We did.
Yeah, we're very lucky in Australia. So, it was election day, which is always, I don't know, call me a little bit twee, but there's always a little bit of a vague civic, pride that comes on voting day. Having said that, I am on record as being voting is not the best form of democracy and we should definitely move to democratic lotteries. But failing that, Australia does this pretty well.
Democratic lottery?
No, we won't. You'll get me going for ages. At the end, remind me and I'll explain.
And Hedvig Hergaard. Hedvig, I got a question for you. What kind of democracy food would you like to see?
Oh, so it has to be...
Democracy ravioli.
It has to be cheap to produce. It has to be easy to distribute. And it can't be a full meal, right? It has to be like a hot dog, a taco,
It has to be on the go, right? It can't be a sit-down thing.
These are self-imposed constraints.
No, they're not. They are constraints of the reality of the situation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they technically don't need to be savory. They could actually be sweet.
Yep.
So
absolutely.
A donut could be something. I do
democracy donuts.
I'm a big fan of cinnamon scrolls. I have one every weekend at a cafe I go to.
Oh.
I think they're quite easy to make. They can even be a little bit warm. You can but they don't have to be.
Hedvig Hergaard, when you next find yourself in the same geographical location as me, let me make for you my cinnamon scrolls because I'm going to say
I've had these.
They're better than nearly every bakery I've ever been to, including the ones that are quote unquote famous for their cinnamon scrolls. Whenever I try them, I'm like, mine's better than this.
Yep. Well, I would like to see some democracy fries with a side of Liberty ketchup.
Oh, yeah.
That's what I want. But Chips. I like Hedvig's idea a lot better. A fixture of our show has been Hedvig's annual update of the Eurovision Song Contest, which we always love. Because there's a surprising amount that you can learn about language from Eurovision. But even we were surprised at how much about language you could learn from Eurovision. We were surprised that you could get an entire university unit out of it. And we're saying that because someone has. Right, Hedvig?
Yes. So we talked to two of the three course conveners at Umeå University who run I think the title of the course is Eurovision and Linguistics or Eurovision and Languages. I forget the exact title.
It's called Linguistics and the Eurovision Song Contest.
The Linguistics and Eurovision Song Contest. And we talked to Solveig and Paulette, and they were so nice. And it was so fun also for me to just I would throw out a little trivia fact, and I was like, and was that Georgia? And they'd be like, yes, it was. And I was like, someone else knows what I'm talking about, and I am correct. Oh,
there is a uniquely fun feeling to find people as tragically into, or even more tragically into, the thing you're tragically into than you. There is a deep validation that happens when you're just like,
it's true.
I should say also that I like Eurovision, and I like the way that they've done it. I like it as a lens to understand other things. So when you watch Eurovision, you get a sense of how the different countries are portraying themselves, right? That's very interesting to me. I kind of care less about the stage performance and I don't know, I care about it as a cultural spectacle and a way to understand politics and identity in Europe.
You approach Eurovision how I approach pro wrestling, which is to say,
right.
I don't actually like it very much, but it's fascinating.
Exactly. Which is why also, there are some years where I've been I'm not sure I want to watch it. There's a bad vibe this year, as some previous years have been, for example. So Eurovision nerds come in different flavors. But it was really fun to talk to them. And I don't know what exact parts Daniel have cut, because Solveig and Paulette and I sometimes weird off a little bit. So we'll see what
kept it all.
What he's cut up.
Kept it all. Yep. So we'll be airing that chat with Paulette and Solveig Bollig from Umeå University. Our latest episode was with Dr. Emily M. Bender and Dr. Alex Hanna about their book, The AI Con, where they document the current AI hype cycle that we're living in. But our episode before that was a live episode for Lingfest 25. We piled everybody in a room, voted on tough English usage questions. You can watch that and or listen to that. If you wanted to be invited to bonus episodes and live episodes, or just support the show, you can do that by becoming a patron. You can help us share the message of linguistic science and become part of a community of nerdy people who like language. Just head on over to patreon.com/becauselangpod.
Hey, Daniel, before we get into Eurovision, should we not check in with what's going on in the world of linguistics?
Yes, this one was suggested by the Deliquescent Future on Blue Sky, also by Diego and Aristemo on our Discord. We've got a lot of people suggesting this story, which is kind of a shame because it's about Trump, and we do have a Trump ban in effect because it's exhausting.
A Trump-bargo.
A Trump-bargo. We don't want to talk about it all the time, but when it's about language and when it's kind of important, we sometimes will jump in, like when the president made English the official language of the USA. We thought, this is notable. We should talk about it. So the Deliquescent Future says, did you catch the executive order requiring truck drivers in the U.S. to be fluent in English, quote, sufficiently to converse with the general public, end of quote.
Interesting.
To be enforced against currently licensed commercial drivers by unspecified measures? Did we? Well, no, we did not. And so that's the story.
Thank you guys for bringing it to us. I think it's really interesting because so truck drivers is actually quite a common job in the US. I saw this map of the US states and what the most common job is. We can get into all the details of what counts as the same and different job. But truck driver is a lot of people are truck drivers.
Yep.
And a lot of people are foreign immigrants who work as truck drivers because they can drive a car and they can do the thing, but they might not necessarily speak English or for that matter, Spanish. I actually had a supervisor, a linguistics professor, who was interested in this because there's been a bit of rumors that there's a trucker pigeon.
Oh, right.
That because there are so many people speaking different languages, and they sometimes need to get on those little sets and be like, hey, there's a big boulder on this road, and you go on the radio and you tell all the other ones so that they can safely navigate the roads and whatever. So truck drivers often talk to each other on this radio. Maybe now it's all Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, satellite. I don't know.
Is that a CB radio?
Yeah,
is that what it is? 19.
Something like that. But it makes a lot of sense that even if you work for different companies and stuff, you might want to be collegial and be like, hey, this is happening. Or like, I'm behind you, but don't worry, or whatever.
I think even on a much simpler level, like truck drivers just talk to each other as well, because it's a boring job where like you spend a lot of time just with not a lot to do.
Right. This is why my mom, as she went like hitchhiking around the US in the 70s, said that truck drivers are really good because they're bored out of their minds and they're going really far and they're like, sure, I'll take you to Nevada. And if you also like, you can do that safely or unsafely. I don't know if it's possible to do. But anyway, there's this idea that because a lot of them don't speak the same languages, that they would have developed like certain shorthand communication for like common things
like
to say.
Creole or something.
Exactly, and that this could be like understood as a pigeon in the same way that we talk about trade pigeons or war pigeons or colonization pigeons.
Or even space pigeons.
But it's sort of hard to get data on this. So there were some people saying maybe this is happening, and there were some people in like trucker forums online talking a little bit about the shorthand, but to my knowledge, no one's done a research project on this. But if they're all forced to have a high level of English, then yeah, they wouldn't need this.
Well, here's the background. This is kind of a revival of an old rule from 90 years ago. That's right, July 1937. The rule was that truckers had to A, be able to read road signs, B, communicate with law enforcement, and C, interact with employers and customers in English.
I can see that.
Some reasonable things.
Yeah.
Up until the Obama years, there were loads and loads of infractions drawn up. A lot of people were also placed under a situation called out of service, which means you're done. You're not able to work in this business. In the Obama years, enforcement became deprioritized. And so those infractions stopped. But now this is a revival of that. And it's an executive order, which is not the same as a law, but executive orders do send signals, and people who are in positions of power will take that as a signal that if they wish to abuse the law or use the law very zealously, there will be no consequences for that. And I was thinking, why trucking? But I think you've answered that question for me. This is a place where maybe a lot of people who don't speak English work, and it's a lot of people as a sizable work group. And, you know, this is a chance to enable people in positions of power to fire people who are either English learners or not great at English, or just simply not hire them.
I think the question that's important here is if there is an actual danger to road safety. Because if there is, I can understand wanting a solution, right?
Right. Well, I did do some looking up on that, and it seems that even in cases where there have been big accidents or bad accidents, the problem hasn't been language. Language didn't cause the problem usually. It was lack of training or other things that can get you in trouble if you're in the trucking industry. Just from my lookups. Now, it's not clear how this is going to be enforced, and my fear is, because, of course, the Trump administration has a thirst for the worst, it's probably going to take the form of arbitrary hassling of people who aren't in the in-group. But for people who are in the in-group, they'll be fine and won't be affected by it at all. And the reason this is happening, I think, is because Trump is just that guy who hates having to press 1 for English on phones if he ever did have to. Once again, it's rules for thee and not for me. Rules that protect the in-group but punish the out-group. That's what I think is going on here.
So if immigrant truckers might not have jobs, they would need to be replaced by American-born, English-speaking truckers who want those jobs. And what sometimes happens when like immigrants are kicked out of certain fields is that some developed nations find that like their own don't want to do it. Yeah. So this happens with like fruit picking, for example, where it's like, okay, then we have no one to pick our avocados. So it'll be interesting to see how many. And I mean, it's also possible that a lot of the immigrant truck drivers actually might meet this requirement, even if they don't speak English fluently. Yeah. They could maybe meet these requirements. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
It's anybody's guess how much trucking will even happen once the coming economic slowdown happens, the tariff-induced slowdown.
Yeah, maybe all of the jobs that are lost are sort of like pretty much exactly how many fewer will be needed because the economy has shrunk.
And also, like, when we talked to Carmen Foss, she also brought up that a lot of people who moved to the US and who don't speak English very well want to learn English. So she talked about them doing these like volunteer training sessions with people. So people would like travel far, but often they have a 9-to-5 job and like a family, and they don't have the resources. They can't pay for the courses. They don't have enough time. So if this means that trucking companies are going to give classes in English to these truckers, I don't know if that's going to happen.
That's a nice idea. Let's find out if that's what happens.
We'll see what happens.
Well, thanks to the Deliquescent Future and to Diego and Aristemo for bringing that story up to us. Here's a question. When it comes to learning, what's better, typing or actual writing?
Well, we have 3 educators on this show, so I would imagine that we are all familiar with the evidence for this.
Well, spell it out, because I'm a little fuzzy.
I'm not.
Go for it.
No, I don't know the evidence. Like, I don't.
Okay.
I'm the one. I'm saying I don't know a lot about. I'm bad at handwriting.
So, look, I might be about to eat a whole bunch of crow, but let's see.
Let's go.
Well, just tell me what you know.
My understanding is that there is substantial evidence to suggest that things like retention are significantly improved if you incorporate a substantial handwriting component to your learning process. To put in a much simpler way, when you write stuff by hand, you do a better job at retaining it and remembering it.
Okay.
Why is that, do you think?
I suspect it's because it's slower and it operates at a speed that this is not evidence-based at all. This is just my supposition. I've always guessed or presupposed that it's to do with the fact that you have to go quite slow when you write. Even people who write quickly, the fastest typers are much, much faster than the fastest writers, unless you're doing some weird journalism shorthand or something like that.
Shorthand, yeah.
And I think for that reason, and because you are engaging not only the psychological process of like, I want to spell words on a page, you're also doing like the mechanical and dexterous manipulation. And now I understand that with a keyboard, you're doing that too. But I think... I don't know, there's just something about writing that hits different. For me, typing on a keyboard can exist sort of a little bit faster than conscious thought, whereas writing absolutely can't, right? Like writing happens slower than conscious thought.
I mean, when you're typing stuff on a keyboard, it's the same motion, just in a different place. Doot, doot, doot. But when you're writing different letters, that's a suite of different movements. Well, this is some work from Dr. Gorka Ibarbarriaga of Universidad de País Vasco in San Sebastian, Spain, and a team. This was published in the Journal of Experimental Child Psychology. They were working with 5- and 6-year-olds because they felt like that was kind of a critical time for writing.
Yeah.
And they got the young ones to use the Georgian and Armenian alphabets, which they hadn't seen before. Okay. And they would have to remember letters, sounds, pairings, and made up words. And to practice, some of the kids used a keyboard, and others had to actually write. And it turns out that, Ben, as you say, the kids that did better in the tests were the kids who had to physically write to practice. The team says, our work confirms that the graphomotor function is essential in memorizing letters and words structures. So it seems that doing the task with your body helps a lot.
Do you think it also has to do with the breaking down of the character? So, like, for example, I've been doing like Duolingo Japanese and Mandarin lately, and it makes you practice the signs. And I also did Mandarin in high school, so I remember a bit of that. And it's like, oh, well, it's first this little dot, and then there's this line, and then this one. And you become intimately familiar with the internal structure in a way that when you type it, you do it all at once. Am I making sense?
It totally makes sense to me because I had the same experience. I had to learn Cyrillic handwriting, and I just did it for a long time. And I can still remember it, even though there's so much Russian that I've forgotten. I spent so much time on Cyrillic handwriting that I kind of surprised myself by still remembering automatically how it goes.
Why did you learn Cyrillic?
I minored in Russian.
You did?
For my undergraduate.
Oh, cool.
I did.
I remembered this. Yeah, I knew this.
Didn't you know that about
interesting
me?
Little factoid, fact about Daniel.
That's cool.
So if you want to learn, if you want to be able to memorize, try getting in there and writing the characters instead. Well, Now, this is with different writing systems. If you're learning a language and you have to do a different writing system, try grabbing a pencil, not just typing.
I know I'm ever more drifting into this this space of being like a not only a crotchety person, but like a person who is like eschewing a lot of modern things. But there is, I think, going slow and finding ways to go slow is a thing that I think will be increasingly important for us as a society, as like our world gets ever faster and more sort of complicated, and AI and blah 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 blah. And writing by hand is just a really effective break on stuff. You can't go fast if you're doing some sort of task where you have to write stuff out by hand. I don't know. I'm looking for ways to slow down, and that seems like one of the good ones.
That is. Thanks. Let's go on to our last news story. Pope Francis died recently, and people have noticed something about his tomb.
Huh?
It's covered by a slab of marble on which is simply inscribed the name Franciscus.
Yeah.
The U on the end of us is a V, which is very cool, very classical.
Well, that's like just like all European
Latin.
architecture, right? Yeah.
That's like
Latin.
Roman.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But how to put this? It's the kerning.
Oh, Daniel, are
What?
we doing font nerd story? Is that what's happening here? I just need to share with everyone listening. We do this remotely, but we can see each other. And Daniel just had the cheekiest fucking grin when I asked that question.
Another fun tidbit about Daniel, besides the fact that he apparently knows a bit of Russian and Cyrillic, is that he's designed fonts, which I knew about in theory. And then like a year ago, I was using an app to do a thing, and one of Daniel's fonts came up as an option. And I was like, ooh.
Was it the Daniel font?
It was the Daniel font.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was me.
Yeah.
But Ben, you might notice when kerning is really bad.
Yes,
and by
I know.
kerning,
I
I'm
make
referring
fun of
to
you for being a font dork, but there is, unfortunately, what is actually happening here is I am not at peace with a side of myself, which is also a closeted font dork.
You're trying to destroy that side of yourself.
Exactly.
Yes,
so
I know.
please tell me about what font crimes have been writ large upon the marble slab atop Pope Francis's corpse.
So kerning refers to the space between letters in a word. If you put the same exact amount of space between all the letters in a line, it will sometimes look wrong. For example, the word wave. If you have an equal amount of space between all the letters, it will look wrong because the W and the A need to be a little closer together to look right, and the A and the V need to be a little closer together so there's not this massive hallway of space between them, this diagonal. You need to look at not actual space, but visual space.
It's I hate to say it, but it's about the vibes, man. Like you just like it's one of those things of like if you do it exactly right, the vibes are all off, and then if you just gussy it up and you get the vibes right, it feels like everything's equal, and it's not.
Or if you have what's
true.
called a monospace font, where each character has the same exact space, people will think it's programming because it's popular in a lot of programming UIs. So sometimes when you see someone who just wants to say, this is code, they'll use a monospace font.
I do that in my notes for my lectures. It's true.
So, Daniel, what has happened to the tomb?
Oh, it's not good. The word Franciscus, the F and the R just look like they are more widely spaced than the other letters, and that poor A is absolutely stranded out there on its own.
Okay.
It's done in Times New Roman, which is an unusual choice, but it's very nice. It's very understated. But somebody has there's an illustration in the story for this in Fast Company. Link in the show notes for this episode. But if you look at the illustration that somebody has made, you can see they've just placed equal space between every letter, and it looks very, very wrong, which is unfortunate. I mean, if it were my slab, I would friggin' get up.
Literally turning in the grave.
Unleash holy hell. Yeah. I would.
No, look, it does look, I'm looking at the image now. It does look, for listeners, essentially like there was a person called Anciscus, and they had some sort of job that was like a doctor, but like a froctor, because it just looks like Fr Anciscus.
It's brother Anciscus. Frère Anciscus.
In the interest of having not everyone agree, but also in my true opinion, I'm looking at the thing and I'm going to tell you, dear listeners, it's fine.
It's not.
It's
She's
not
wrong.
that
Can't
bad.
tell.
She's dead wrong.
It's not that bad. It's fine.
This tells us about Hedvig and
You can
not so much about the slam.
look at that FR and you can say that looks like it's part of the rest of the word. Really? I don't believe you, madam.
I just, yeah, it's fine.
Angry Balls on our Discord said, I hope they redo it. At least turn the stone over and do it properly on the other side.
That's fun, though.
It's so
I
fun.
kind of almost do wish they'd do that, because that's the sort of stuff that, 1,000 years from now, when they excavate something, they will, because we find that, right? We find evidence of I fucked that up. I'll flip it over and I'll do it better on the top
you
side.
flip it over.
That's great. That's a really fun humanistic thing for the aliens to find when they're uncovering the evidence of our civilization.
That's it. The aliens will say, oh, there must have been someone named Franciscus, and then they'll turn it over and see the fucked up version, and they'll be like, oh, yeah, fair. Yeah. No, that's shit.
Well, we can see that they had the capacity for rational thought, at least.
And
Excuse
some
me?
design sense.
Or there'll be Hedvig aliens who will be like, oh, they wrote the same thing on both sides. Slight differences. I wonder why they did that. Do they want the Pope to see his own name?
You're right. A spacefaring interstellar civilization is not going to have any attention to detail. They're just going to be like, these are basically the same.
Fucking fonts. Okay, sorry.
This is so good. I seeded, at the beginning of this story, I seeded my ground as the hater of font dorkery. And Hedvig clearly was just hold my
The new
fucking
king.
beer. This is going to be amazing.
It's fine.
I'm coming in hard.
And now it's time for Related or Not.
Related or not.
Thanks very much to Hugh for our Related or Not jingle. All right, this one comes from Tiger Tronia on our Discord, who says, here's a silly one. Rug and rugged.
Ooh.
I said, some of those rugs are pretty robust, I gotta say. But then Aristemo added, wait, what about rag and ragged?
Oh.
All four related? So there's your four. Rug, rugged, rag, and ragged. Some related, some not. What do you reckon?
Rugged is more positive than ragged, right? Rugged is like Aragorn, Strider in Lord of the Rings is rugged.
For sure.
Ragged is you are also unwell and dirty and smelly and you're not doing great.
I'm going to go, I'm putting my flag in the sand straight away and saying rag and ragged are dead related. Like ragged is just you are so shit, you are made of rags kind of thing.
Made of rags. Yep, I could see that. That's my guess too. But what about rug and rugged?
Rug and rugged. I'm thinking the age of those two words is going to be wildly different. I think rug potentially will be very, very old. And I think rugged is going to be a much more contemporary word, and therefore they will be unrelated.
Okay. My flag in the sand is I can see rug and rugged, and I can see rag and ragged, but I'm not seeing a crossover.
Okay. So, this is a hard one. Who was it that sent this in?
It was Tiger Tronia
Okay, very good job.
on our Related or Not channel.
I'm trying to do my usual sneaky move of thinking about other languages.
That's a good idea.
Way to be a polyglot.
Go Norse. Always good. You're the only one who can help us.
Right. Well, the back in a lot of the back of your body part, the back, the pain, where the pain lives.
Okay.
The nape.
Someone's in their 30s.
The hackles.
I may or may not have gotten a sort of massage thing for Christmas by my husband.
Oh, you got one of the guns? One of the
No, I got one that you put here and you pull it and it does
Oh.
Anyway.
Okay.
Anyway. Okay, so a lot of Germanic languages. Norwegian, Swedish, German at least. Back is rygg or rygg.
Okay.
And do you wear rags on your back?
You go on all four.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm thinking I'm gonna go all four, and that there's some sort of thing like a transitivity or a perfectiviness or something that does the vowel shift, because that sometimes happens with like fall and fell. Like I fall, I felled you. They're very similar, and the difference is like whether you do it to someone else as a transitive or causative or perfective or something like that. So I don't know. I'm just gonna say all related. Rag, ragged, rug, rugged, all the same origin.
If she takes this out, I think she's earned the W on this one. This is a pretty good play.
Then I found out that rugged used to mean back in the 1300s having a rough, hairy, or shaggy surface, originally of animals.
Oh dear.
They're all 4 related.
Oh, well done!
She got it. Nice. Done. They're all probably related, all from Proto-Germanic rawa, meaning something like a shaggy tuft or a coarse coverlet or something like that. Also rough, likely related.
Right.
Really? That's interesting.
Thanks to Tiger Tronia and to Aristemo for that one. That was great. Next one's from Michael, who wrote in and said, "Hello, my dear podcasters. Big fan of your show, though just a lurker till now. I have a suggestion for related or not. This might be an obvious one you've already covered. We haven't. Here it is. Attic. The part of a building below the roof versus Attic related to Athens.
Oh, Attic Greek. Yes.
Yes.
Right. I have to say I struggle with the word Attic because I need to remember which one is which. Because you have these like attic and cellar and...
Oh, that's interesting.
I have to remember which.
I never had that trouble.
I've never heard the second sense before right now. So, yeah. To be of or related to Athens.
I think they're spelled exactly the same. Attic.
Okay.
So, what do you reckon? I thought I will recuse myself because I know this one.
Which would suggest that it is related if Daniel knows it.
Maybe.
Or that it's a common thing people think and he knows that it's not.
Yeah, true. I'm going to go with not related because they seem just like very... Oh, unless
they had them. Unless they had a lot of them back there.
What I'm thinking is Greek architecture, classical architecture has that real like squat triangle at the top of like all of the pantheons and that sort of thing. And attics...
The frieze.
And the attic kind of has that shape, right? Like it's under the roof of the... Ooh, it's a stretch though. I'm going to go not related.
Does.
Not related.
It does. Okay. Hedvig, are you going to pull out the second one?
Attic and attic. The Greek thing and the thing... I live in an attic flat. That's why I have a diagonal roof behind me.
Yes, you do.
I think they're going to be related. They're spelled too similarly.
But meaning the same? Like they are
the same.
Identical?
Which isn't always a clue, but the longer they are, the more it's a clue, usually.
Yeah, you can get away with rug and rag being different.
I wonder if it's one of those like Corinthian, Dorian, like architecture terms that we get from ancient Greek. And therefore they are related somehow.
Okay, well, Hedvig is on the right track once again because there are attic columns all over the place. Yeah. The meaning jumped from the column to a triangular facade that the column supported, and then it jumped to the space up there.
So I actually had the exact right answer. I just didn't back myself.
It was in your hands.
Oh, damn it.
But they are totally related, and Hedvig wins the second one.
Ooh.
Wow.
Michael continues, your collective combo of erudition and seemingly effortless banter. Oh, effortless, he says.
Until, that is after Daniel has had his editing ways with the show.
Also, I'll have you know, I love recording podcasts with you, and I love all of you, but sometimes when you make me get up very early in the morning, I'll record podcasts, and I'll be very effortlessly bantery, and then I go lie down for 2 hours, actually. So.
Same. Michael says, your seemingly effortless banter, no doubt the result of tremendous effort and experience, and editing is beyond compare. Thank you so much for your tireless advancement of language nerddom.
Aww.
Michael, you say tireless. I'm kind of tired.
There's tire. Tire exists.
Okay, I'm giving you this next one. This next one comes from me because I wondered. The word is so. So means a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So means to such an extent, it was so big.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conjunction. I was finished, so I left.
Mm-hmm.
And it means in addition, as in also.
Mm-hmm.
Are they the same so?
Oh, okay. So we're not even talking about like putting plants in the ground or putting fabric together. We're just talking about the same spelling.
S-O. That's all.
And then you have the even so and just so, which are arguably variants of the three categories you described earlier, maybe.
Something like that.
This is where it gets hard because it's a short one, isn't it? It's just two sounds.
So the first one is to such an extent, so big.
Mm-hmm.
The conjunction I was finished, so I left shows a result. And then also, in addition.
I'm going to go with all related because it feels like one of those times where we've just kind of lazily used one word just to do a lot of heavy lifting.
That's what we do with efficient units. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But Hedvig is not sure.
Yeah, she seems pensive.
No, I'm doing my...
I got to check on a cat. One sec.
I'm doing my checking other languages. So both German and Swedish have very similar extents of something that looks very similar. So if but that could just mean that those things existed in like Proto-Germanic or they borrowed from each other or something. It's not necessarily, but so jag drack mycket vatten så jag behöver gå på toaletten. I drank a lot of water so I have to go to the toilet. Yeah, it's some sort of prepositional locational thing that means like to the extent of or something like that is my theory.
Yep. Okay. So what do you reckon?
Yeah, all related.
Do you think they're the same?
Yeah.
Okay. You're both correct. Yes. They are all related. Now, here's the unifying sense. When you say that something is so big, you're saying it's big in such a way, right? That's how it is. The so, as in the result, I was finished, so I left. It's sort of like you're saying, I was finished, and things being in such a way as that, I left. Now, Edam Online also points out that these come from an Old English word swa. In fact, sometimes we even see swa. An jordan swa un hjovanum. Like as. So this was a word that grew into so, but it was frequently strengthened by all. All.
Yeah, also.
Right. Which is all. And so also is sort of like all being in that way. And it is contained in compounds.
I never realized how hard it would be to explain a word, to my mind, as simple as so to a non-English speaker. Like I'm hearing Daniel try and do it, and I love you, Daniel. You do a great job, but even you were kind of floundering a little bit. Like it's not an easy word to explain at all.
I worked on that explanation all afternoon.
Really? Yeah, no. That's a good. I can tell. It's the smaller they are, the more frequent they are, the more vague, abstract their meaning, the harder it gets. Ask anyone to explain. Yes. There's a bunch of German terms like mal and doch. And a bunch of other ones that like...
Doc is great.
You just have to be exposed to it a lot.
Yeah,
you vaguely do it, right?
It's another vibe check situation.
Yeah.
It's a vibe check. You mentioned this, Hedvig. If we made a big list of all the words in English from most common to least common, at the bottom we would have a bunch of really long words with specific meanings like microphone and antipathy. Whereas at the top of the list we have all these tiny words that just don't mean anything until you start putting them next to other words. Amazing. Well, that's it. So this was one of those where they were all related, every single thing. Congratulations to Hedvig, but you both did a great job. Thanks to everybody who's giving us these ideas. If you'd like to donate a jingle to us, you can go ahead and send that hello@becauselanguage.com. We're loving the ones we've gotten, and thank you to Hugh for yours. We're talking to Paulette van der Voet and Solveig Bollig of Umeå University in Umeå, Sweden. They are heading up a university class about language called, in English, Linguistics and the Eurovision Song Contest. Hello, Paulette and Solveig. Great to see you.
Great to be here. Thank you for the invite.
Yes.
So how happy are you that this is the first semester you're offering this course, is that right?
No, it's the second one.
Oh, second.
Oh, that's the time when you go through and fix all the problems.
Are you, the intake for the students was before Kai won, right? So, okay. But are you feeling the Kai?
Sorry.
Right, so.
I'm the noob here. You gotta help me.
All right. What usually happens on this show is that Daniel says a bunch of stuff about like Americans. He's like Attorney General and 401k and like tri-state area or something. And I have to be the European to be like, I don't know what those things are. So now I get to do the other thing.
I'm the audience surrogate now.
So the Eurovision Song Contest is an annual contest in which different countries compete in who has the best song.
I knew that.
And you vote, and there are juries, and it's all very complex. And it's run by the European Broadcasting Association. I think I've got that right. And in every country, the broadcaster who is a member of that association gets to pick how they select their representative. And in some countries, it's all done in like back rooms. Like the BBC selects for UK, and it's just a bunch of people. They go into a room and they pick someone, more or less. Whereas in Sweden, we like to do it as big as we can. So we have first a pre-selection filter by some jury specialist. And then we have 4 contests. And then everyone who gets first on that one goes to the final. And everyone who goes second goes to another contest called Second Chance before the final.
Cool.
So all in all, you have 6 weekends of the spring, late winter spring, who are just like Eurovision mania.
That sounds amazing.
Some people think it's amazing. Some people think it's over the top. There are different opinions.
Okay. It can be both.
It didn't used to be this big, but this year, the contest was won by a group from Finland. So in Finland, the east parts of Finland and also south and the island between Finland and Sweden, there are people who speak Swedish natively in their communities. They speak what we sometimes call Eastern Swedish dialects. And I would call them a music comedy group from Eastern Swedish-speaking dialect, entered into the Swedish contest and ended up winning.
Okay.
So they are, I think, they're Finnish citizens. I don't know if they're also Swedish citizens. I'm not actually sure.
No, they're just Finnish citizens.
Yeah, but they do speak Swedish natively. And I think they speak Finnish with like a Swedish version of Finnish as well. So anyway, it's very exciting because we're coming up on the next Eurovision contest. If Sweden wins this one, then we have the most wins ever. And
exciting.
It'd be really exciting. I personally think it would be really fun if that was with the group Kai, because they feel humorous and lighthearted and not this kind of like serious pop, whatever Måns Zelmerlöw was doing this year.
Yeah.
You guys are nodding. Okay, so we're on board. Anyway, but the thing, Daniel, that you have to understand is that Kai is like, it's so, other European countries are understanding this as well. It's very exciting, and they're going to compete in Swedish. They're not going to make an English version of their song for the big contest, and that's unusual.
For some reason, that sounds like it means something, but I guess it's time to bring in Paulette and Solveig. So, what's your? Where are you? Are you both just like massive Eurovision nerds, like Hedvig is?
We all were separately big Eurovision fans, and then we all started our PhDs together and started to watch Eurovision Song Contest together. And obviously, if you put a bunch of linguists in one room watching Eurovision together, it's all we talk about: the language choices, multilingualism. So we always thought that we should do something with that. And we kind of ended up designing an entire course around that.
And we thought that the department would never accept it as a course. We thought we would get a no somewhere in the system, but we didn't get a no anywhere. And we went ahead and we taught it for the first time last summer.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
Yes.
And also I know that a lot of university departments, how to say this? So like at the Stockholm University, right, there's a summer course on dinosaurs that looks like it's very airy and fun, and it gets a lot of students, but it's actually a serious paleontology course. But it gets a very high student involvement. And I think using something that looks very poppy and trendy, you can actually use it as a great focal lens to actually talk about things like, I understand one segment of the course is, for example, about language policy, which is really interesting to explore through Eurovision. So I think it's very smart, and I'm not surprised that Umeå University approved of this, because I think it's like a smash hit.
I mean, we have also great national examples. Linguistics University had a couple of courses, for example, with like vampire focus, and it was basically just Gothic literature, but it was sold as something different. And I mean, it's so great to catch students with something so special and so popular, and then just kind of get in some actual content.
The problem is evaluation.
But it's a serious course. It's just credits and exams and evaluation and everything like that, right? They have to read papers. They have to pay attention during class.
Yes.
You're not just showing up to a room and like playing like YouTube clips of like your favorite Eurovision winners.
No, we were a bit concerned. We thought that some students would think that's exactly what we're doing, but everybody was on board with our vision, and we got a lot of really, really interesting final exams. So we are very happy with how it turned out.
Wow. But you don't want to flunk Eurovision. That would be too terrible. Well, let's take a look at the linguistic areas that your unit touches on, because there's a lot going on here. Where do you want to start? What area stands out to both of you?
Maybe the first module, your module, Solveig?
Yeah. So my module is mostly on basic linguistic concepts. So we have a big part on language versus dialect, prestige, and so forth, just to make sure that everybody who may not be all too familiar with linguistic concepts is on board.
Let's go right there. Tell me about prestige in language as it shows up in Eurovision. What goes on? What's an example you might use?
I mean, then we're already in like language choices, what languages are presented at Eurovision and which are maybe not so common. And I mean, then we can go back to Kai. Swedish hasn't really been all that popular, especially among Swedish-speaking public. So now we have Swedish back on the menu, but Swedish hasn't really been all that big of a prestige language in the Eurovision contest at all. And I also think it hasn't really been a prestigious language among Swedish speakers.
Why not?
I think the associations for Swedish it's a bit too cute. It's a bit too funny for a serious competition. It doesn't sound all that serious. And I know that non-Swedish speakers might disagree with that, but I think the associations from Swedish speakers are a lot in that line. Like if you want to compete seriously, it can't be in Swedish.
And when you want to win.
Exactly. That's the problem. I don't know, Daniel, if you understand this, but like the Swedish contest is so much geared towards winning Eurovision, to the degree that people will vote like tactically. So they'll like put their vote on not who they think is the best in the final, but who they think that the rest of Europe will vote for. Oh. And this means that very often the person who comes like second is actually the one that like people actually enjoy, and they'll get like the most streams on Spotify or whatever. But the person who wins is like the bland thing that we think most Europeans will like accept.
Disappointing.
It is. I find it very disappointing. I think that's also why people have not been wanting to put forward entries in Swedish, because they think, well, Serbians and like Spanish people are not going to vote for a Swedish act, which is a bad way of thinking about it, because some of the things that do the well is like the campy, funny, local, regional stuff, right?
Okay.
Like, what's the Ukrainian woman called? Eins, zwei, drei, tanzen, do.
Berka Saduchka.
Thank you. That's like some of the best Eurovision you'll ever see. Yeah. And that's like how many languages in that song? At least 2, if not 3.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it also has to do, I mean, Sweden is the 3rd largest exporter for popular music. So I also think Sweden views the Eurovision Song Contest as some kind of card for the rest of the world to see what we can do. So I don't necessarily think that Sweden wants to be present in the Eurovision Song Contest as representing the country, but rather representing the music industry in Sweden.
Okay, so it's like Max Martin industry we're representing rather than...
Yeah.
In that case, which languages are considered the high prestige languages? Paulette, what's your assessment?
For a long time, it has been English. And especially if we look here in Sweden, as soon as they were allowed to participate in English, they did participate in English. They were one of the first, or I think they were the first country that participated in another language than one of their national languages. Because when Eurovision started, there were no language rules. And it took some time before the countries figured out that there were no language rules. And when Sweden did, they did it very successful. And since then, as long as they have been able to participate in English, they have more or less been participating in English. It's even so that songs that have been winning the national selection in Sweden in Swedish have been translated into English for the Eurovision stage. So this is very new. But at the same time, we see there is kind of a border in Europe between Northern and Southern Europe, where Northern Europe, English has a lot of prestige to participate with a song in English at the Eurovision Song Contest, while in Southern Europe, we see that the national languages have a lot of prestige.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
The Romance languages, for example, they are speakers of those languages are more likely to compete in their national languages. Same goes for Southern Balkan region. So there are specific regions that are more likely to compete in their own languages. But then obviously we also see a bit more general trends apart from English. French is a relatively high prestige language, as well as Italian. For a while, a couple of countries were also participating with partly in Russian or partly in German, but that hasn't been really all that visible in the last couple of years for understandable reasons. So we also see a bit of a shift of what is considered prestigious or not.
Spanish is the party language.
Daniel, you got me there. That was exactly what I was going to say. We've advanced before in this podcast the theory that sometimes countries where Spanish is not an official language will sing a song in Spanish because Spanish is the party language. Yeah. And if you're doing a party song with a rapid beat and you have a lot of dancers on stage, you sing in Spanish even if you are who was it that did it? It was one of the Balkan nations that did it recently.
It was Romania a couple of years ago that had.
Right. Yeah. Yes, it was Romania.
Great to have these two.
Well, at least. So do you agree with our Spanish is the party language theory?
I think it's a party language, but it's also very much tied to specific music genres. I think if you're competing with a Americanized country song, you're not going to sing in your national language. And I think the same also goes for party songs or Latinized songs. Then you're more likely to compete in Spanish or a Romance language.
It reminds me a bit of what happens someone described the situation in India when it comes to official languages or the languages that get used. If we make it Hindi, then Telugu speakers get mad and other speakers. If we make it this language, others speak. So English might not be most people's favorite or the language that most people feel comfortable in, but it's considered to be an acceptable middle-of-the-road choice. Is that kind of a situation in Eurovision, if you're going for broad appeal?
We can also see that English songs have been doing very well among the juries for a long time. And the jury vote has been very important in the beginning of Eurovision. And it has been changing. The public vote has becoming more and more important and more present at the contest. And we see also that there is a difference between the jury vote is often going to songs in English, while the public vote is often going to songs in other languages than English. So we also see that happening.
And can I ask, since you're two Eurovision experts, what is the reason for the jury vote? Is it just because we think the masses have poor taste and they need to be reined in?
I mean, in the beginning, it was simply a practical choice. Like in the 50s and 60s, you can't just ask the public what they think and conduct that in a timely manner. That's just not possible. But in most juries, it's music industry professionals, it's people from the individual broadcasting services. So they obviously also have a kind of vested interest in what becomes popular.
Sure.
Personally, I would think, I don't really think that the jury does all too much. I think that has also been a contentious point the last couple of years, that there is a really big difference between what the jury wants and what the public wants. And I think the public doesn't view the jury votes too favorably right now.
No, it does feel, I understand what you said, like the Eurovision Song Contest has been going on since 1960.
56, yeah.
Swap around the numbers, 56. And of course you couldn't like call in or click on an app and have everyone do it within like a certain amount of hours. But you can do it now.
Yes. So. And we already see a change there. Like the semi-finals rely on purely the public votes right now.
Nice.
That's a change that has been made in 2023, I believe. So we do see a change in the voting system, and I think it's probably only going to be a matter of time that we're just not having these jury votes. But at the same time, it's a great show to have the national spokesperson announcing the jury votes. It's a part of the thing that makes Eurovision. So I think like in that case we would have to find another solution for that, because I do think that most people still want to have that kind of suspense of having a spokesperson announcing the points.
Now, you mentioned that Russian has been a language that has been selected by many singers, but for understandable reasons, as you say, this is no longer so. And it sounds like geopolitical tensions have an impact on the languages that people use for their songs. Are there any other examples that you can think of or that people have brought up?
One big example is, of course, Ukraine. Ukraine had a streak where they basically just sent English-speaking English songs, and since the Crimea invasion in 2014, there haven't been any songs purely in English. There have been a couple of songs with English and Ukrainian lyrics, but I mean that's also a big thing to publicly show your national identity, especially if that national identity is being questioned. The same goes for the Balkan regions. The ex-Yugoslavian states have been more likely statistically to participate in their own language, simply because you kind of have to show that you have a language, that you have a singular national identity. So there definitely are geopolitical trends, and there are geopolitical forces that kind of play into the language choices.
Yeah, for sure. So when you talk about the language policy part of your course, do you also discuss like the language policies like outside of Eurovision, like in the countries in general? So like for a while, for example, it was only the case that you could participate in Eurovision with a language that was an official language in your country. And not all countries have official languages or have like something like different kinds, like minority, or like sign languages are in like a weird category sometimes. So do you, in your course, do you talk about that as well?
We do. Obviously, we do have a focus on Sweden, so we're talking a bit about the Swedish minority languages. But we also have a second module, which is purely multilingualism and minority languages that Paulette has been teaching.
Yes.
Oh, well then let's talk about that for a second. What's going on with minority languages? They've been on the rise, haven't they?
They have always been present at the Eurovision Song Contest. Like there is often one song with like either parts in a minoritized language or completely in a minoritized language. And we have seen that for many years. And sometimes it's just like a couple of words. We have had Norway in the 80s participating with a song with the title in North Sami, but the rest of the song was in Norwegian or English, in Norwegian, I think, yes. And so we always have had a presence of minoritized languages. And I would really like to see them more at the Eurovision stage than what we see them now. But it's not that it's getting more. It's not increasing. It's not something that we see.
Do they win, though?
Jamala had parts in Crimea.
In Krim-Tatarian, yeah. And I mean, Norway a couple of years ago with parts in North Sami, they did pretty well. They didn't win, but I think they ended up second place. So they come up close, but winning, yeah.
So are they a way, like on the international stage, is singing or having a reference to a minority language or culture, is that another way of representing your country, if you understand what I mean? So like there are not Sami speakers in so many different European countries. So Norway, by having some Sami in their entry, are sort of saying, oh, this is a part of being Norway, is we have this as well. Is that sort of how it works on that stage? Because like people in like, I don't know, Montenegro won't know Norwegian or Sami, so it'll be equally foreign to them.
Mm-hmm.
So
I think that when it comes to the song that I mentioned from the 80s that Norway sent, Sami Etnam, that was a bit more special because the 80s has been a very important period in Norwegian and Sami history when it comes to the Sami getting a voice and a place in the nation state of Norway, with huge protests amongst others. So it had like a certain political load that time. Well, nowadays, when we look at like more recent contributions, the one that Solveig mentioned, I think that it has almost like a feel of a kind of exotification to show like this is also us and we're also fronting this.
We're more different. Yeah.
The question I wanted to ask was, are the majority languages steamrollering the minority languages? Are they crowding them out, or do you feel like they're giving them a chance to shine? What's your view?
Probably a bit of both. Mm-hmm. We do see different attitudes in different countries. We also see differing attitudes depending on what year we're looking at. Italy, for example, they always send or try to send the winner of Sanremo Song Festival, and they recently had a change in the guidelines and the rules. So the song has to be in Italian, with a cover song in either Italian or English also performed at the festival. And previously they allowed for dialects as well, and now they have a guideline that says that it's not supposed to change the general Italian character of the song, which I have no idea what that's supposed to mean in the context. I'm going to assume that they try to further a unified Italian national identity.
Yeah, okay.
But I find this change really weird, and I don't really know what to make of it. So I do think that it really depends on which year, which country. There's differing opinions basically in every year and in every country.
And we should also maybe say that the EBU, they have at this moment no language rule. You can participate in whatever language you will. We have even seen constructed languages at the Eurovision stage. But yes,
Netherlands, Iceland,
Belgium.
Who else? Belgium, right?
2 times.
This is so fun. I'm usually the only one who knows this. I'm enjoying this.
Which conlangs were used? I don't even know.
Belgium had, for example, completely made up language, and I think the Netherlands as well. And the idea when Belgium for the first time participated with constructed language, the idea was normally that it's either the Flemish broadcaster, so from the Dutch-speaking part or from the French-speaking part, sending it alternating years. And the idea was then like, we sent this year a song in neither of our national languages. So there are a lot of different motivations behind it. And the EBU doesn't have a language rule right now, but the broadcasters in the different countries selecting the songs, they might have language rules. For example, Italy, what Solveig mentioned. But for example, there are also countries, for example, Netherlands, they don't have a language rule. It's completely free choice of language. So it depends a lot on countries, or not even on countries, but on the broadcasting unions participating, what they are sending.
SVT, the Swedish broadcaster, for example, they say that they aim to have 30% Swedish-speaking entries in the national selection process. That means 30% is not a lot if you compare it to, for example, Italy, where it is mandatory in Italian, or Iceland, where all but the final have to be in Icelandic. So it's a big difference depending on the country and the broadcasting service.
I think what's really interesting about talking about the Eurovision language policies of things is that Eurovision, I think, becomes a very nice mirror or like way of viewing like how nation states are building their national ideology and identity. So by allowing more different languages or something, you're saying something like, oh, either we're so secure that we're so monocultural that we don't mind if someone does something different, or we're trying to build a multinational, multi-ethnic state, so we would love to have different representatives. It's hard to remember. I think this is going back very far, but like Germany and Italy. So the big five are Spain, France, UK, Germany, and Italy, and they get to participate regardless of how good their contributions do in like the first filter, which is sort of why they tend to send maybe not the best entries because they don't have a much selection process. But Germany and Italy, I think, stands out a little bit among them as, they're kind of the youngest countries in that group. Do you know what I mean? Like, Italy only unified in 1850.
Yeah.
And Germany is barely a coherent country now. It's just a bunch of prince city-states that sort of stuck together, and then some of them became like Switzerland, and oh God, all my German friends are going to listen to this, but I think they know what I mean. Also Italy also speaks a language that has a high prestige, but is not spoken very much outside of Italy. Like French is spoken in West Africa and Quebec, and Spanish is spoken all over the world, but Italian isn't. So maybe they feel, I don't know, a bit more fragile about their cultural identity outwards, and that's why they're enforcing these rules that it has to be Italian. Does that make any sense?
Yeah. I mean, our Italian colleague also suggests that it might also be just a recent change due to the political climate in Italy right now, that it is very nationalized right now, that it is supposed to be a unified Italian strong state, and that can be true as well. If we look at German, for example, I think it's really telling that Austria has participated with several different dialects, and Germany has not. Germany has only participated with standard German songs. So I also think that might be an indicator that, no, we don't really need the diversity within Germany right now. We are barely unified as it is. So I do think that there are certain identity building characteristics to be found. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not a specialist on German language by any means, but just living here, I think that Germans are quite sensitive they seem to be quite keen on removing some dialects. I live in Saxony, and the Saxon variety of German is famous for being like the worst one. Actually, I learned an interesting thing. An Austrian friend of mine, apparently in children's cartoons, the villains are often speaking Saxon German.
There's a choice.
He grew up with this. Yeah. And he grew up with these cartoons, and he said that he didn't know until he moved to Saxony that it was a real dialect that people spoke. He thought it was just what villains spoke on TV, which says something about how they're treating. I don't even know what that would be in Swedish. I think it would probably be Stockholm dialect for villains. Just, picking on the capital is a popular thing to do. But yeah, I'm not surprised to hear that the German entries, if they are even in German, are in like standard High German or whatever.
Okay.
Bit shame.
Let's move on to gender and how that's performed, because language is a proxy for a lot of things about ourselves, national identity, but also gender. What have you noticed in how this is showing up?
What we can see is that songs about either sexual identity or gender identity tend to be in English, simply because they appeal to a different subset of the public. I don't think songs like that would be all too popular within a language, just because it is just a subset of the entire European public that is supposed to be talked to.
So like the Austrian entry, Phoenix, was in English.
Yeah, or like Switzerland's winning contribution last year, Nemo the Code, with non-binary identity is also in English, and that's something we do see, that they tend to be in English, or songs about questioning one's identity or very universal topics, grief, identity finding, they do tend to be in English because they are so universal and they're meant to appeal to a broader public.
Right. So you sing in your not English language, lack of a better word, when you want to say something about your country, your culture, or a part of your country or part of your culture.
Or more about traditional love.
Yes. And even if you want to say something like, what's that with the Polish entry with the butter?
Yeah.
Yeah. If you want to, or the Grammys.
Butter? Butter, you said?
They were churning butter on stage. It was fun. Everyone enjoyed that.
Okay. I understand that gesture, yes.
Right. Or like if you have a bunch of babushkas on stage, if you want to appeal to like an older version, like something like 1950s of your countries, you sing in your national language. But if you want to talk about gender or war, well, the Crimean Tatar one was partially.
Yeah. But I mean, the setting the context, the setting the stage was in English. So I do think like if you want to talk about difficult topics such as war, for example, English is a good medium. It's just more understandable for a broader public.
Do you think that sort of steamrolls the? I don't know. So from a broader perspective, for example, I've been thinking about this, and again, I'm not a specialist on this, but like, for example, in lots of different countries, there are like different kinds of gender identities or sexualities that don't map one-to-one onto like a sort of Anglo-American understanding. So like the term queer or trans, or bi or something, there might be like another sort of kind of identity that's a bit similar, but doesn't map one-to-one. But then as a lot of English culture spread around the world and talking about these topics, sometimes maybe that eradicates that kind of do you guys know what I mean?
Yeah, like, I understand. I think obviously it's also hard to map if you don't really understand the language or the specific cultural context. So I wouldn't want to really say one way or the other, but I do think people do have the choice to sing in another language if they really want to, or if the broadcasting member allows for it. So I think it's probably more of a question of how the broadcasting union sees it, if that is something that is supposed to be expressed in English or in a national language, for example.
So if you sing in your national language about something that concerns your country, if someone doesn't understand you, they minimally understand that you're representing your country by the choice of language. So in a sense, they kind of get a little bit of the meaning of the song just from the choice of language.
Yeah.
But whereas if you want to talk about grief or love or sexuality or identity, that you don't think you can communicate that well enough if you don't speak English.
Or you want to approach like a larger public with it, and you want to appeal to a larger public with it. And you think that that public that you can appeal with it is outside of your country.
Yeah. Yeah. Like there's a minority of people who are not straight in all countries. And there are few people maybe in your country, but if you add them all up across the countries, there's more of them. But they're all from different countries. So what do you choose? English. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I'm sort of seeing how this works. The choice of language is a tricky topic. What are you signaling? Who are you trying to appeal to? What's the topic? What's the audience? You also have a section in your unit about metaphors. And of course, metaphors tell us a lot about what we're trying to communicate. Of course, metaphors of love, very common. What do we notice from the lyrics? What have your students pointed out?
Our colleague is not too impressed with Conchita Wurst's Phoenix, Rise Like a Phoenix anymore. I think she has read 15 essays with the same topic.
Oh no.
And students were completely free to choose any song they wanted to write about.
Maybe next time they're not allowed that song.
That was her thinking as well, yeah.
Fair enough.
Well, then give me an original one. One that was off the beaten track. Or what do you teach when it's metaphor time?
I think we can think a lot about Israel in the past years with a lot of metaphors about the war going on. And it's also, then we can also see that metaphors are often used to convey like a political message. While Eurovision, one of the rules that the EBU has is that it has to be an apolitical contest. So to hide the political messages, we can often see that metaphors are used.
Okay, that makes sense. Like what's an example?
I mean, last year, for example, there was a huge controversy about Israel's entry because it was originally called October Rain, clearly referencing the Hamas attacks in October, and they had to rename the song and called it Hurricane, but basically left the entire meaning as it was. So it was still understandable if you looked at the lyrics, that it clearly was associated to the political situation in Israel and Palestine.
But you can't do something. So there was one of the Balkan countries that tried to participate with a song called We Don't Want to Put In or something, which is a pun on Putin.
Putin, yes.
Who was it? Was it Georgia?
It was Georgia in 2009. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm just pleased I'm remembering. And that one I think was disqualified because they were like, this is too obviously political.
I mean, that was also on the cusp of the South Ossetian war. So they did have a reason to kind of, show their disappointment with Russia, so to speak. But they were not allowed to participate with that song. So we do see that the EBU tries to moderate which songs and which lyrics are allowed. But obviously they don't really, there's no specific system to it. Like whenever there's a song that might be too political, it's a lot of discussions, it's a lot of uproar from the member broadcasting services, and maybe they change it, maybe they don't. So it also has a lot to do with what the EBU is feeling and thinking and what kind of pressure they are facing.
And sometimes the metaphors can also be visual. Well, I don't know if you'll agree with me, but like Russia had an entry just before the war. That was those two twins with like staffs or whatever. And I saw some popular reviews of that was like supposed to be a metaphor like for Ukraine and Russia.
Yeah.
I don't know if most viewers got that though, so I don't know if it qualifies.
No, I mean, that's the thing. Like you can always feign ignorance. both when it comes to metaphors, to language choices, to visual aids. You can always say, well, it doesn't really mean what it means, right? So obviously there is a huge gap between what might be conveyable and what the public actually understands.
Okay. So what am I missing? What else has come up in the course content that we haven't talked about already that you feel is really significant?
I mean, we talk so much about it. Aside from the course, we do talk a lot about language choices. People want to know, why do certain countries choose certain languages? Why is English so dominant still? And I mean, now we've gotten a couple of questions about the fact that English for the first time is not the most dominant language, or, well, not the majority language anymore. So that's something that everybody always wants to talk about. What kind of reasons are there?
And that's Brexit, or is it America? What is it?
I don't think it's Brexit.
No.
Okay.
We do see that Britain hasn't been doing all that well after Brexit, apart from 1 year where it was very much TikTok oriented.
Oh, Sam? What's his name?
Yes, Sam Ryder. Yeah.
I have to say, it does feel like we, as Europeans, tend to vote UK low, not necessarily because their entries are terrible, but also because we listen to their music so much otherwise, and we kind of don't want them to win here as well. Like, we already grew up with Beatles, and this is ours, and I feel like that's the sentiment. I don't know about you. Do you think that's true?
I think to a certain degree it absolutely is. I think everybody, like, we do see that, I mean, in the 2010 to 15 years, there were so many Spice Girl inspired entries in general. I think people got sick of that. I also think English, well, it's a great conveyor, but we don't really like English all that much as a means of national expression, and we do see that people appreciate national expressions, may it be in music choices, that it is folk inspired, or language, or national costumes. Like, we do want to see all the differences that make Europe special. And then, of course, I do think that people don't really like the big five. Like, if you have to pay to get into the big final, I don't think people like that.
Well, let me just take a moment and say thank you for doing this interview in English. You know, you could do this in Swedish and you would all be okay, but here I am, the one that walks up into a crowd and everybody feels like they just have to switch for me. So, you know, I'm aware of that. And I thank you for that. And our audience, our English-speaking audience, thanks you as well. I will point out that the language of the unit is English as well. You've decided to. What was the rationale behind that? Is that just a normal thing at Umeå?
No, it isn't. We wanted to get like a very diverse student population with students from all over Europe, because it's an online course, so they can participate online from all over Europe. Or all over the world even, but for students from Europe, it's easier to study here. Or cheaper, mostly.
Once again, there's that choice. There's that language choice thing going on. Wow.
So we wanted to have like students representing the different countries participating at the Eurovision Song Contest and bringing their different perspectives with them. And that's something that we have really seen last year when we taught the course for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Do you also, like, something that I like to say on this show, because I'm the only non-native speaker out of the three of us, is like, there are more non-native speakers of English than native speakers. Like, the gravity of the population is with us, and we don't maybe have the prestige, and we maybe make lots of quote-unquote mistakes, but there is more of us. And if we choose to speak English to each other, it's because we think we want to convey something and that that's the most efficient way, not because we like, well, I happen to be married to an Englishman, so I have some love for England in particular. But And it's just like a pragmatic choice of just similar to the Eurovision contestants. If you want to reach many people about a complicated issue, I mean, I guess Daniel's not going to like this, but like, I guess that if there was like decent automated translation, you could actually do this. Like if there was like a Star Trek Universal Translator, but there isn't, or not a reliable one at least. So. Mm-hmm.
All right. So Eurovision is coming up this year, starting May 14th. That's the semifinal one. Of course, there's been a lot going on already. But what should I, as a Eurovision noob, be watching out for? What are you thinking is going to happen linguistically? What do you know, and what should I be looking for?
Look at the multilingual songs. This year, we have traditionally seen being multilingual songs used in different ways to appeal to different parts of the public, to show national identity, and so forth. But this year, we see that they use multilingualism in like a humorous way to make fun. And that is something new and really exciting that we can see in several participating countries, amongst others, Sweden.
How are they making fun using multilingual songs?
I mean, with Kai, with the Swedish entry, it's so clear that it was specifically written for a Swedish audience first. Like all the references are very much tailored towards a Swedish audience. We have, for example, a couple of Finnish words that are typically known by Swedish speakers. We have, for example, Esa Peite, which...
we have to explain this.
We have to explain this.
Daniel.
Yes.
Who wants to?
I'm ready.
So it means do not cover, and it was put as like a warning signal on all the elements.
Radiators.
Oh, radiators. Okay.
So, everybody who has looked at a radiator has probably seen the Esa Peite warning sticker at some point in their life. But since that's usually just in the Nordic countries, it's very much tailored towards the Swedish-speaking audience. So we do see that. We also have a reference to Arja Saijonmaa, who was very popular in Sweden, a huge icon in the Melodifestivalen, in the Swedish national selection. So we have a couple of references.
Finnish, right?
Yeah, she's Finnish.
Not even a Sweden Finn, so to speak.
No. But it's so clear that Kai simply wanted to find new Swedish audiences and kind of ended up in the middle of Eurovision.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's especially ironic because they wrote a musical a few years ago called Botnia Paradise, in which the main character wants to participate in the Swedish Eurovision Melodifestivalen. That's like the goal of his life. I haven't watched this musical, but I understand. But they sort of make fun of the idea that you live in Finland, but you watch Swedish media all the time, and you want to go to Melodifestivalen, and isn't that sort of funny and maybe a little bit pathetic? And then they went and won it. And it's just very funny to us. But I don't know actually how it's going to play it to international audiences. And what are they up against? What's the competition?
I mean, on all the betting sites, Austria is pretty high up and Israel is pretty high up. But as of now, Sweden is on number one. So we'll see how that goes. I do think it's so fun. It's in dialect. It's not even in standard Swedish. It's in a Värå dialect. And that's just great to see, to have something so specific and so tailored to the Swedish audience. And people just find it fun and exciting and are looking forward to seeing Sweden compete with something in Swedish for the first time in forever. So yeah, I think that's just so fun. But what I'm also looking forward to see is, I would recommend watching both the semifinals and the finals, just to see which songs and which languages fall out of the final. I'm looking forward to seeing that. I don't really want to bet on anything there. I don't know if the English-speaking countries or English songs are going to do better or worse there. But I think it's going to be interesting to see what's disappearing before the finals.
Okay.
It looks like there's a lot of non-English speaking entries. I'm scrolling through it. So Latvia is competing in Latvian, Lithuania is competing in Lithuanian, Montenegro is competing in Montenegrin, Netherlands is competing in French and English.
Mm-hmm.
So it looks like a quite like multilingual set.
18 out of the 37, I think, are partly or completely in a language other than English.
That's fun. That sounds high to me. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Well, this is terrific. So I've enjoyed hearing about this, and I think I might check it out and see what kind of language things we notice. We're talking to Paulette van der Voet and Solveig Bollig of Umeå University in Umeå, Sweden. Thank you both for coming here, and I hope all the best for your class and the marking. Oh, dear.
Thank you very much. We're looking forward to all the student essays.
Yes.
They were brilliant last year.
Yes. Thank you for having us.
It's time for Words of the Week, and the first one is suggested by James, and it's your. I am really late to this one. Have you heard this on TikTok?
Is this like
What's
a
good?
new version of Yas?
Yes, it is. That's true. Especially in New York City, apparently. It's a shortened version of what's up or how are you. If you see a friend on the street, you might say, what's good. That's from an article from New York Art Life from a couple of years ago now. Top 10 slang New York City words from to brick.
Surely it's out of vogue in New York by now. like if it's from 2 years ago.
Definitely.
Like think about how quickly Yas rose and fell from like common usage.
Yep, definitely.
But it's gotta be from how are you, right? That's the only ones that have any sounds that are vaguely like that.
Like how are you?
Because it's a bit similar to or are you all right? You're right? Is a thing in British English at least. So I think it's how are you or are you all right that gets it out. It's not what's up because those sounds don't match.
No.
Yeah.
It can't be. Yeah.
I think I need to do some more research on this because I wasn't able to I found conflicting reports, including the pirate thing, which is almost certainly wrong.
I'm not seeing that.
Definitely not.
No.
Let's go to a different one that James also suggested, and this is Olo, O-L-O.
Okay.
Have you heard this one, Ben?
I had this brought to my attention by my partner, and I think I ended up frustrating her somewhat because I was the annoying person who, when told like the cool, interesting science story, ended up going, yeah, but it's just green, right?
No, it's not green.
Exactly. You are doing a one-for-one verbatim theatrical recount of exactly what went down, yes.
Okay, so here's the deal. Olo is a color that only 5 or so people have ever actually seen.
So the way color works in your eyes is that you have, what do you call them in English? You have the little things.
Rods and cones.
They're cones.
And depending on how many you have and maybe some of their configuration, you can see different colors. And if you're colorblind, then you don't have certain ones. And therefore you perceive the color spectrum of light that's coming into your eye differently.
That's right.
So some animals, like birds and butterflies, I think, supposedly have way more. So they have actually patterns on themselves that we can't see, but they can. And some people have this genetic mutation where they have some more. So they can see something. That's it.
Most of us have 3 kinds of cones, L, M, and S. And they're called L, M, and S because they're sensitive to long, medium, and short waves of light.
Got it.
But researchers at the University of Washington wondered, what would happen if you stimulated the M ones with lasers? Yeah, not with regular light, but laser light. And what happened was that people started seeing a color that nobody had ever seen before, because you can't see this color unless you have freaking lasers fired right into your retinas, stimulating your cones.
So the logic here is that although we can see pure, like, say, green and all of the other colors that exist in nature will in some way or another be firing off the different types of cones in our eyes in different sort of amounts. And even with things that like heavily favor one over the others, there's nothing that will only ever exclusively target just one type of cone in our eyes until people fired lasers into their face. And then they were like, did it.
I can see colors that nobody's ever seen before.
And that color apparently looks like cyan. And
yeah, but weren't you listening? You can't see it without the lasers.
Okay.
The reason it's called Olo is because you're hitting none of the short ones, all of the medium ones, and none of the long ones. O-1-O.
I don't know if anyone's told you before, but like an L is not a 1.
Well, to be fair, this is a major failing of the Roman alphabet.
It's the one thing I would change. It's the one thing. Capital I and L.
That's capital I, L, and numeral
ones.
number 1 is just an astounding design flaw.
I learned to type on an old Royal typewriter that did not have a number 1 because you were just supposed to type a lowercase l.
Wow.
Because they looked the same. How bad is that?
Bad.
We'll take a moment in silence.
It's bad, yeah.
Sometimes there's a word of the week that we just want to get on the record because it hasn't been done yet, but it seems so important, and this one comes to us from Brendan. I have a word of the week suggestion, audience capture.
Oh, yes.
Now, if you're listening and thinking, oh, we've done that, haven't we? Yes. In our episode with Caitlin Green, a couple of Caitlin episodes ago, we talked about Russell Brand and Griff Drift.
We did.
And she said, is that like audience capture?
Yes.
And
I'm going to put my hand up and be really ignorant here. I have no idea what we're talking about.
Ooh.
Hedvig, would you?
Please.
Do you know, Ben?
Educate me.
So if you want to make money online and you want people to click and watch your content,
sure,
you might start with some sort of pure artistic thing and then be like, I'm going to make videos about rocks. It's what I like the most.
Gotcha. Yep.
You make some videos about rocks, and then one time your goat walks into frame and they get a lot of attention. And you're like, maybe I should make videos about goats instead. And slowly but surely, you get this dynamic between the audience and the performer where the audience will actually shape you. And you can actually get into a sort of dead end or a situation where you can't make anything else but the thing that they...
Okay, so this is what I've kind of thought of as like the Joe Rogan effect, right? Where you start off in one place and then you end up in a very different place because of what the audience kind of rewards you for.
Yes, and it's happened to Russell Brand. It's happened to a lot of different people. And there are some creators that I like out there who like explicitly don't do this. And it also depends on how much you want, how much money, because you can probably continue making your rock videos and get some money. But if you want a lot of money, and if you already have a mortgage to pay off because everyone loved your goat videos and you want to continue paying off your mortgage, you might be like, well, this is what giving people what people want.
Okay.
In a way.
So why, if we have talked about it before, why are we circling back now?
Well, Brendan suggested it. I liked it. Brendan says it refers to a dynamic between an audience and a performer in which the performer feels compelled to act in an otherwise undesirable way to appease audience demands. Oh, I was doing rock videos. Suddenly, I'm a COVID denialist flat earther.
Okay.
What happened? Does anyone remember that cartoon Sinfest, that one webcomic? Really well done, but now they're like horrifically anti-Semitic and awful.
Right.
Never mind.
No.
Now, Brendan continues, it seems like a play on regulatory capture. It's not an exact parallel, except insofar as both point to power dynamics that have been flipped. Oldest usage I could find was this 2022 essay. We'll put it on the website. It's called The Perils of Audience Capture. I wanted to throw this in just so we could get it on the record because we haven't ever done it. But I also wanted to throw in attention economy because that has been... It's not a new phrase by any means, but it's been on my mind an awful lot.
It's certainly the driving force of our contemporary media environment.
You know, it's that song, Hey, Look Me Over. There's a lyric, how can you win the world if nobody knows you're there? Attention is valuable. Like, the Trump surrogates went on every interview they could and dominated the airwaves and dominated the attention. And that was like money for them. They didn't have to spend. Whereas Harris and Walls did some stuff, but they seemed terrified to do a bad interview. No, attention is like gold.
You just normalize stuff, yeah.
Chris Hayes is doing a great job of talking about this. He's on MSNBC. He did an article in The Atlantic called You're Being Alienated from Your Attention. He points out that Elon Musk, you know, he had all the money in the world, but he would have traded it all for Twitter. You know, that attention that he got from that was worth it to him. But it's a dynamic that some people get.
I have to say that that's one of his few redeeming qualities, is that he wants people to think he's good at video games and like his tweets, which I don't think Jeff Bezos or Mark Zuckerberg or Trump actually care about as much.
Like his ridiculously transparent need for general approval rounds off a couple of the sharp edges.
Apparently not enough somehow.
Would you say it's endearing?
No.
But he wants to be liked by like cool, edgy gamers, which creates some problems. But going back to the term audience capture, it's a little bit, a proto version of this could be fan service. So a lot of popular fandoms, like animes and stuff, will sometimes be like, well, we have to put in a bit of boob because that's what people like. It's not the same, but it's your audience is actually having an effect on your production.
I think you're right in identifying that it's like a nascent expression of the same idea, because it's funny, we were talking, Daniel's like, attention economy's been on my mind recently. Fan service has actually been on my mind recently because I've been revisiting some of the animes that I adored when I was a teenager, and they're a tough watch. They are a really, really tough watch. It is sort of like, I don't want to say heartbreaking because I think that's overstating it a little bit, but there is a thing of like, in the same way that going back and watching like Ace Ventura: Pet Detective, which as a 10-year-old I genuinely thought was the funniest piece of media that had ever been made, and that stayed the funniest piece of media that had ever been made. And then you go back and you watch it with like an adult brain, and you're like, fuck, he hated gay and trans people so much. Like he might not have as an interpersonal person, but he was just so willing to throw that group of people under the bus for a laugh in a way that was just so horrendous. And anime is the same thing, where you're just like, wow, you guys fucking hate women. Like, you really, really hate women.
Clockwork Orange.
Or just like don't view them as
human beings.
People
worthy of
like yeah, there's several animes where it's just like a lot of gratuitous boob stuff, and it's awkward, especially when it's like, which it often is, a lot of younger characters on screen, and you're like, I know this character is supposed to be 13-year-olds. Like, I don't need to see their cleavage. We're fine. I can skip past that. But it's something they felt like they needed to do in order to get people's audience. Or honestly, like, and sometimes people get it wrong. Like, people thought with Game of Thrones that people wanted more dragon fights. I think they found out that wasn't what people wanted, but they thought so, right? They seem to think so. So you can get it wrong as well.
So it's a concern for creators like us, and I think about it a lot. And we said once, Ben, I remember us talking about this and saying, I'm kind of glad that we're medium popular and not massively popular, because if I ever got paid for what I thought, oh my God, people could pull me around like anything.
I suspect people, not our listeners, because they're also delightful, like tragic nerds like us, but I think if like the general population were to hear us say that, they would do some version of like, oh, these fucking guys just have like sour grapes, basically, right? Like that's just what they have to tell ththemselves to make peace with the fact that they're not like huge. But as I'm getting older...
And yes, it is.
But as I'm getting older, I genuinely... Because I teach young people and especially younger young people, so like people who are like 12, 13, you hear like, I would love to be a YouTuber, or I would love to be an influencer, like a lot. And there are worse jobs that I can imagine, but not a huge number of them. Being a person who was living the grind of being a content creator sounds fucking horrendous to me.
It's exhausting.
Like, that sounds like a genuine punishment for badness. Like God punishes you by fulfilling your wishes kind of monkey paw shit to me. Like, it sounds awful.
And yet there are some people who manage it like somewhat well.
It takes a very special kind of person.
Yeah, it does. So what's her name? Is it Jenny Nicholson? The YouTuber who does the long essays? Or like BreadTube, or to a certain extent Jenna Marbles, or there are people, but they are medium successful.
Yeah, exactly, right? Like anytime you hit like Mr. Beast level notoriety, it just seems like an absolute clusterfuck of terribleness.
Yeah. Well, on that note, let's go on to our last word of the week.
Clusterfuck.
I picked up on this one from Data Bear it's at dataandpolitics.net on Blue Sky, who showed a giant photo of an iceberg that looked like a dong. It looked like a dong, and it cleaved away, and it went up in the sky, and then it crashed down to Earth. And the skeet was happy giant phallus-shaped iceberg floating in, get this, Conception Bay.
Ah, there we go.
Of Dildo, Canada.
No.
Oh,
Day.
No.
wow.
Yes. To all who celebrate.
Okay.
Happy all of that day to all who celebrate. So it's to all who celebrate. I'm noticing this a lot. People are using it as a joke, saying, Happy Easter for all those who celebrate. But then you can also say Happy whatever day to all who celebrate. Mm-hmm. It's kind of a joke way to do this. I've got
to be honest, Daniel, you really, with Dildo Canada as the final little piece of information there, you really pulled this story out of the judgmental hole that I had immediately chucked it in, which was this is like yet again Exmo Daniel being not being able to help but be titillated by the vaguely sexual thing.
What?
Ben, did you click on it?
Oh, it is kind of sexual, isn't it? I hadn't even noticed. I was just focusing on the last part.
Oh, pish posh. You absolute.
Did you look at it, Ben?
Yeah, it looks like a dick, for sure.
It's a dong.
Especially from the particular angle that they've... I suspect if you went around a bit less. But no, that's fun.
But like I said, when it got to Conception Bay and Dildo Canada, I'm like, okay, this is in fact newsworthy. Like that's a run of related items that is too juicy to
Isn't that something?
Talk about.
So I got curious and found that the name, this is from Wikipedia, the name Conception Bay comes from the Portuguese Baía de Conceição, Bay of the Conception, and was presumably given in honor of the Feast of the Immaculate Conception, December 8th. Like, how someone will discover an island on Christmas Day and suddenly that's Christmas Island. Yeah.
Like
that kind of thing.
Easter Island.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly common. So this is the Immaculate Conception Island, Immaculate Conception Bay.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now,
do we have...
Why dildo?
That was going to be my follow-up question.
No one knows.
Oh, good.
We don't know where the word dildo comes from. People have offered many unconvincing etymologies. It could have been that Dildo Canada was named for the sex toy. It would have been possible. It was James Cook and his associates who named it, and they sometimes gave things playful and naughty meanings. But then I went back to our files, our transcripts, and I found Mother Tongue with the late Dr. Jenny Nuttall. So that was nice to listen back to that. And she points out that sometimes dildo, how in some songs they would say, hey, nonny, 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 hey, nonny, nonny, and it doesn't mean anything.
Mm-hmm. Ramalama ding dong.
Exactly. Well, they would do the same with dildo. It doesn't mean anything. It's just like fa la 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 la, fa la 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 la. And dildo was one of those. Let's listen now, shall we, to...
What have you got for us?
This is from the BBC. I hope they don't mind us playing it. It's countertenor Alfred Deller singing a song by Thomas Morley, Will You Buy a Fine Dog? Let's listen now.
Will you buy a fine dog with a hole in his head, with a dildo, with a dildo, dildo, with a dildo, dildo, dildo?
There we have it.
That was weird as fuck.
With a dildo.
It clearly underlines the thing that and that etymology line also suggests as one possible thing, which is diddle.
Diddle.
So
right.
diddle, diddle, twiddle, twiddle, dee.
Possibly.
That usage of dildo in that song sounds like that, right?
You could also imagine, and this is one thing that I think Oxford English Dictionary points out, it was a well-known sort of do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do sort of chorus that if you wanted to say something unmentionable, you could use that and say, I was going over to buy a do-do-do, I was going to buy a hey, nonny, nonny, if you know what I mean. So it could be that dildo got its name from that use of a refrain.
Like bear, like a, what do you call it, a taboo word?
Yes.
Okay.
But can we go back? The song says, would you like to buy a dog with a hole in its head?
Yeah.
It's all typical nursery rhyme nonsense.
I thought that the use of the word dildo in that song was the least noteworthy aspect of that song.
Yeah.
There was some fucking weird shit going down in that song.
I think it's just meant to be a silly song.
Okay.
Yeah, it's like a pocket full of rye, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
So, happy dildo for everyone who celebrates. Your Olo, audience capture, attention economy, and fan service, possibly, to all who celebrate our words of the week. Let's take a comment from John via email. hello@becauselanguage.com. John says, hello, I just wanted to offer a wee bit of my own specialization, Scots dialectology and revitalization. Scots is cool.
Yes.
Not Scottish English, but the separate language which is known as Scots. Sorry if this feels like a bit of a row, but I feel the minority language speaker POV could definitely be a useful one here. Firstly, you discussed whilch. Remember how we said that which, the man which I saw, was once pronounced Wilch with an L?
Vaguely.
Yeah.
This is a while ago, a couple of episodes. It happened when we were doing Related or Not with Vault. John says it is still actually used in Scots as whilk. W-H-I-L-K. Here's it in context. The ken whilk I'll gae for. These sort of things are mostly the same as ilka either anyway. Which means I don't know which I will go for. Those sort of things are normally the same as any other anyway. John says, I'd also add that CH instead of GH, such as in loch, meaning lake, is now basically the only way ch is rendered. We say richt, right, nicht, night, thocht, thought, etc., with the uvular fricative, not cough though, that's just cough. Also, T and it for past tense ED forms. Ben, I remember that you liked past. I passed the house, P-A-S-T, instead of P-A-S-S-E-D. You liked that. Well, that's the norm. Scots beat the simplified spelling folks to that one. Yeah. The other thing I wanted to mention was that Scots has no standardized spelling, and while there's plenty of conventions that have been mostly agreed upon, this lack of standardization means that I can get a good idea as to what variety someone speaks from their writing. Dinna or da versus dinne for don't is especially shibbolethic of northeastern versus central belt Scots respectively. In a sense, it's led to regional quasi-standards, but what I'd propose is that the existence of standards is a generally good thing. The enforcement of them is not.
Okay, that's a good take.
There's almost a direct line between the adoption of English language Bibles, including the reasons for that adoption, in Scotland in the 16th century, and the broader stigmatization of Scots as a mere dialect and Scots suppression over the last 200 to 300 years. Point being, as a revitalizer of this language, the continued lack of a standard Scots orthography is part of this revitalization project. I just felt it important to highlight as I thought it might have been missed in your discussion. Spelling standardization and reform should support communication, not suppress it. In Wilk case, I'm 100% behind it. Cheers, John.
That was a very thorough and very welcome rejoinder.
I'd say.
I was sitting through the whole thing. I was even reading ahead a bit, and I was wondering where the friction was, because John wrote that this might be a bit of a row.
I think maybe we had come down a little bit more sort of somewhat dogmatically on like, let's standardize things. And he's basically been like, or not.
Oh, that's how he did. And I agree with him, though, that like it is good to be able to efficiently communicate with people. And unfortunately, it seems like when it comes to spelling and reading and writing, we are less good at variation than when it comes to listening, probably because we've done it for much less longer time, etc. It uses entirely different parts of our brain. So it does make sense that people do want to communicate. That is, after all, what we use language for. It also connects to what we talked to Solveig and Paulette about, where the Eurovision, where they said, people want to sing in English because they want all of the people watching the show to understand what the song is about. And then that's what you do.
But we did also make the point that if there's variation in sound, that's not that hard to deal with. But variation in spelling is sometimes very difficult.
It does seem harder. I don't know if any research on it, but it does seem harder.
But John is saying, hey, you know what? That's good too. Yeah. Can help. Can send a message. Thanks, John, for that. And thanks also to our guests, Paulette and Solveig Bollig. Thanks to everybody who gave stories, words, and comments. Thanks to SpeechDocs for transcribing all the words. And thanks to you great patrons for keeping the show going.
Hedvig's turn.
If you like our show and you want to support us in doing the show, if you want to have the show go on and not stop, then there are some things you can do.
We won't stop. I'm not stopping. You're gonna have to drag. Are we doing the thing? God's gonna kill me unless I get a jet.
God's gonna kill you to get a jet? Oh my god. Is this a Mormon thing I don't understand?
Oral Roberts, if I remember correctly.
Anyway, if you like the show and you want to support us, there are a bunch of things you can do. We have the username BecauseLangPod on most platforms like TikTok, Twitter, Blue Sky, etc. Blue Sky, we are actually BecauseLanguage.com, which is also our website. You can go to our website and submit a speak pipe. That's when you record your voice saying something, and then we might play your voice in an episode, which is always fun. It's always fun to... It's Daniel does a great job of reading out your guys' comments, but sometimes it's nice to hear it.
Yeah, but that would be so much better in John's voice.
Exactly. If John wanted to actually do Scott's, that could be really fun. You can also send us like a voice memo or something. Our email is hello@becauselanguage.com. And another great way of supporting us, like how most podcast recommendations work, is talk to people you like. Maybe you're taking a linguistics class and you can tell some of your fellow students about it, or just your mom. You can also write a review of us in any of the places that you can do reviews. I think I personally like Podchaser is one of the better ones to leave reviews at. Yeah, those are some things you can do.
You can also become a patron. You get stuff depending on your level, like being able to sit in on live shows or bonus episodes or mail outs or shout outs, and you can even come and hang out on our Discord server, which is awesome. It's where all the really nice people hang out. Also, Daniel. You help us pay the bills, you help us make the show good, you help us transcribe the show. We send it to a company called SpeechDocs, and they have to listen to all of the just terrible shit that dribbles out of my mouth and then turn it into the written word, which I never, ever stop being impressed by. We like to thank our patrons at the supporter level, and we have been engaged in a very curious system of reorganizing it, because it got really boring to say all the same names in the same order every single time. So Daniel, what fucked up mind-melding dreamscape hallucinogenic trip have you built for us today?
On the Discord, we've been talking about autocorrect and whether it's gotten kind of bad lately and why. Usually, if a word is not in the vocabulary, it will autocorrect to the closest word. And the way it does this is it uses something called the Wagner-Fisher distance, also called the Levenstein distance, which is just how many steps it takes to get from one string to another. So mat and bat would have a distance of 2, because you've got to change the M to a B, and then you've got to drop one of the T's on mat. That's 2 changes. So that's got a distance of 2. Good so far? Mm-hmm. Well, I decided to order the names based on what word their name would autocorrect to if you only allowed animal names for some reason. So this is which animal your name is closest to, and then alphabetized.
Wow.
Ready?
All right.
Okay, here's the animal you got. This is like your animal. Alyssa and Aria Flame, you both got alpaca, because that's the animal that your name is the closest to. Especially Alyssa, which you've got an A-L, and then you got an A at the end. Aldo, Amy, Manu, and Andy B all got ant, which is funny because Kenny Archer got anteater.
Oh.
That's interesting. Nazrin, you got baboon. Roger, badger. Kathy, bat. Renee, bee. Nikolai, bison. Rachel and James both got camel. Colleen and Whitney, you both got chicken. Tim and Elias, clam. This one's interesting. Lord Mortis, cormorant.
Oh, good one. That's a good one to get.
It's a bird?
Yeah.
Yes, it's a bird. I remember James Sumner who tweeted, "Yes, it was me who smuggled a large seabird into the plenary and launched it into the speaker's head with the words, 'Actually, this is more of a cormorant than a question.'"
Oh, God.
God.
Chris W., you got crow. Diego, deer. Tig, dog. Andy from Logophilius, dolphin. That's interesting. It took a lot of doing, but we got there. Sydney, donkey. Jack, duck. Steel, eel. Termy, emu. Margaret, ferret. Faux Frenchie, you got finch. Keith is a fish. Laura, gaur. I don't even know what kind of an animal a gaur is. Does anyone know?
Gaur, spell it?
G-A-U-R?
Gaur.
What does it look like, Ben?
Oh, it's a water buffalo.
Cool. All right. Good job, Laura. Ignacio, gnat. Christopher, hamster. Sonic Snedgehog. No points for guessing what Sonic Snedgehog got.
Hedgehog.
Correct. Kevin and Helen, both a heron. Lissa and Aisha, hyena.
Ooh.
Yeah. Lewis, ibis. Linguistic chaos is kingfisher. Interesting. Joanna, koala. Larry got lark, and Fiona got lion. Chris L, loris. Grammarian, marten, which is a kind of
a small weasel.
Ferret, weasel.
Yep. I came across them on my ride across America. They're very cute, and they're also psychotic.
Yeah, they're wild critters. Molly D, mole. Pharaoh cat, parrot.
Oh.
Felicity was pelican. I guess that's because of the E-L-I-C join up there. Didn't take much. Mignon was pigeon. Tony was pony. Rosh was rail, which is an animal. Sam was ram. John Troy, stingray.
Cool.
Stan, swan.
Oh.
Amir the tapir.
Oh, yes.
I should just read these like they're an animal. Meredith the termite. Nigel the tiger. And Wolf Dog the wolf.
Wait, hang on. What are Hedvig and I?
What? Oh, shoot. Hang on.
I might be pig. Because
Hedvig,
that's
pig.
what
Yeah,
one
yeah.
relative... There's a small person in my extended family who does call me head pig.
Oh, dear.
I like that a lot.
Ben, you were bee.
Okay.
Daniel was donkey. I got the same one as Sydney. With the same animal. That's lovely. And Hedvig, the herring.
The herring. That's fun.
Yeah.
Isn't that
like-
something?
I like herring.
Yeah.
It's nice,
yeah, yeah.
tasty.
Back to you, Ben.
Okay. Now I'm doing the Hedvig thing. I'm not caught up. There we go. And our latest patrons at the listener Neville. What's happening? What's happening? I can't.
Listener Neville.
Sorry. I can't read and see you guys at the same time. Hold on. I'm doing that. I'm doing that. Okay. And at the listener level, Narushi and Marty. And at the friend level, Verena. Our newest free patrons, Sasha, Twix Linguistics, Melissa, Laura, Sabrina, Matthew, and V. Thank you to all of our patrons.
Our theme music was written and performed by Drew Kriplianov, who also performs with Ryan Bino in Didion's Bible. They just released their first full album this month,
Nice.
which is very good. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time, because language.
Yeah!
Pew pew.
Yazors. You're welcome too, Ben, but do you want to do more interview stuff?
No. Sorry.
No, not really. No, I
I
don't.
like chatting with you guys. I don't have linguistic things to ask linguists.
Yeah, but you're good during an interview, I will say.
Well, it's probably good because I already derail it,
Yeah.
and I think
You and I are a terrible force. The fact that Daniel put us on a show together was seriously strategically stupid of him.
I didn't know at the time.
How could I know? How could I have known?
Tell me more about Agatha Christie.
Sorry, yes, please. Go ahead, Vic.
in her stories, sometimes people take eye drops for various conditions. And some of the eye drops, if you eat them, they will kill you.
Oh, so
they're,
she's
like,
used
not
it as
toxic.
a classic.
Right. So they're not toxic to put in the eyes, but they're toxic if you put a lot of them in someone's tea, and they don't taste that much. So it's like
Interesting.
super good, like poison thing.
Well, because
Nice.
that apparently that would I would guess that is a thing that could be true, because the eye is an extraordinarily bad way at imbibing things into the body. And so every time, for some bizarre reason, so much sci-fi, Aish and I watch a lot of sci-fi, so much sci-fi does like future drugs through the eyeball. And every time it happens, Aish is just like, it's like, the reason our eyes are white is, and other parts of them are clear, is because there's so little blood flow in them and so little blood vessels that is like a mechanism to get things into the body. They are uniquely shit, like especially
And also,
Wow.
they should be, because they are essentially like an extension of the brain in a way.
Yep.
So you'd want
Direct
them to be
path,
bad
yeah.
at taking stuff up, because otherwise
sure.
you have a direct access to the brain, which feels
Definitely.
very bad.
You need an air gap. It's an air gap.
Yeah.
Now I'm waiting
What happened to Ben?
for Ben to zip back into that chair and say, Daniel, spinning around a couple of times. What's going on in the world of linguistics? But of course,
Something happened. I heard a noise and then he went.
I'm sure everything's fine.
Sorry. Just getting water.
Oh.
I made the keep going
We
motion.
thought there was like an accident.
Getting water through the Patreon spookery bit?
Well, I figured you had a bit to do, so, here we go.
Yeah, you did.
Is-
you know
is
what?
it time for my segue?
You're right. Yes, please. You're drinking out of a mason jar? That is so 2000s.
I know.
You hipster.
My first year of linguistics, I took a lot of notes by hand, but I also did a lot of drawing.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't all writing. It was a lot of like drawing like the vowels in the IPA chart, but with like
There's a
teeth.
lot of evidence
I don't
for
know.
that as well. Diagrammatics and stuff is really,
Yeah.
really, really helpful.
And that helped me because, just writing, actually, I'm not sure what actually cut it for me.
So, interestingly, this is just like me being a high school teacher for a second. I don't want people listening to this to walk away from it going, oh, cool, all I have to do is write stuff out by hand and then my retention goes up, because paired with the fact of like doing handwriting stuff is really good for retention is the complementary, or the sort of the, what's the opposite of complementary? The
Contrastive?
The contrastive.
Corollary?
The contrastive fact that rewriting notes is pointless.
Yes.
Like, it is a deeply useless.
Oh,
Yes.
really?
What?
I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
There is basically no evidence for rewriting notes being an effective revision and study mechanic. Like any more than just
Okay.
reading your notes would be.
That's fascinating.
I know. And you were looking at a person who spent most of his university undergrad doing that as a primary revision technique.
Right?
Oh, no.
So yeah, it's and unfortunately it's just like one of those really, really bedded in things for some people. Like when you say that like there's no evidence for women's menstrual cycles syncing up, some people get very, very angry.
Oh, I know.
So incredible.
For some reason.
Or speaking of educational trends, I was listening to a podcast recently about the fact that the learning style stuff, kinetic,
Yes.
visual learner,
Classic.
apparently that's all
Nothing.
poppycock.
And
If
Nothing.
anything,
It's the one thing everybody knows, and there's
and it's not true. And actually, textbooks sometimes will say, you might want to be familiar with the idea of learning styles because it might come up on your teacher's certification exam,
yeah.
but sort of
Despite
between
the
the
fact.
lines.
Yeah.
But like, we're going to include it in a textbook because we know they're going to ask you about it.
I'm going to go you one better than that. And there are a huge number of like educators and teachers who are still thoroughly singing from that hymn book, big time.
Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean it's not okay to give students things in a style they like.
It's like
Their
so
preferred
it's
styles,
one of
that's
those
fine.
it's not a particularly destructive idea to hold. Like, you're not going to do a terrible job by like attempting to approach learning with kids who aren't flying with a particular way in like different ways, right? So like the outcome of approaching education in that way is still usually a kind of like pro-social one, because you're going to go, well, this kid isn't really doing well with chalk and talk, so I'm going to try like physicalizing things and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it is unfortunate that it's also just like learning types is not a thing.
I did hear a study where they actually show that it can actually pull down the grades a little bit in some cases, which is fascinating because if the preferred learning style of a student doesn't match well with the content or the teacher, it can actually make it a little bit worse. But if anything, it might open the educators up to the idea for maybe I can switch things up. And just like that basic idea maybe can be helpful sometimes. I don't know. I am not an educator. Can I pull you one?
Yes.
Yesterday at my Friday beers, we talked about one, and I want to see what you guys think.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I'm ready.
Leper, the disease.
Oh, no.
As in a person in...
And leprechaun.
Oh, dang. I thought you were going to say leopard the animal.
No. Leper, a disease that causes limbs to fall off. And leprechaun, a sort of magical being from Ireland who may or may not give you money.
I should quickly note that just because I'm not sure if this is Hedvig not fully understanding the Englishness of it, but a leper is a person who has leprosy.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yes. Yep. Yes. A leper is the person who has leprosy. So you could also say leprosy.
Leprosy and leprechaun. Yep.
Leprosy,
okay, cool,
leprechaun.
Cool.
Yeah, fine.
You know, also, I learned back in my Bible-knowing days that leprosy that's described in the Bible is not a disease, especially in the Old Testament. It's not a disease that makes skin fall off. It was a disease that put spots on you. And if you would suddenly come up with white spots, and then you had to go away from the community and do purification rituals. However, it wasn't that they didn't like the disease. It was that they hated mixing things that were different. Like fabrics. If you had such a bad case of this leprosy that you turned entirely white, then you were fine. You could come back until you started getting better. Then the normal color would return. Then you had to go away again.
Was it just the thing that...
Until you were fine.
What?
For what's it called? The thing that Michael Jackson had?
Vitiligo.
Yeah. Was leprosy just vertigo?
Something like, but now I've forgotten my Bible.
Okay.
But it's not the same
leprechaun
thing. That's interesting.
And leprosy.
Leprechaun, leprosy.
I don't think they're related. I'm going to say no. I don't think that leprosy are related to leprechaun.
I'm going to say they are related. And my guess at the pathway is that it's leprosy and lepers and all that sort of stuff. No, this sounds stupider the more I think about it, but I'm going to go with it anyway. I'm forging ahead. I reckon we've actually taken leprechaun and used that as the genesis point for leprosy in some way, shape, or form.
Oh, that's interesting.
So I'm wondering if perhaps our like tiddly-tee, oh, look at me, pot of gold at the end of the rainbow version of leprechaun as like a tiny cute Irish man is actually a very sort of pleasantly whitewashed thing of today, and as so often is the case, the original sort of myth was actually a far more creepy, scary, decrepit, like bog dwelling creature that would have been described as like very what we would think of as like a leper or a leprosy having person. So I'm thinking that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay. So 1 vote for related and 1 vote for not related. So for the record, yesterday after 2 beers, I thought related, and I was wrong.
Oh
yes.
Because let's do leper first. So leper and leprosy goes back all the way via Greek and a bunch of other stuff to Proto-Indo-European root lep, which has to do with to peel. And it can also relate to something that's delicate and weak. So like something that has peeled off, something like that. It also has cognates that don't make sense. So lepidus, it means pleasant, charm, fine, elegant, effeminate. So again, this like small meaning. So that's leper. And leprechaun is a funny thing because we actually get one of our favorite things, which is metathesis. I hope I'm saying it right in English. So sometimes over time, sounds and words can swap places with each other. So for example, this has happened with English bird, which at one point was something like brid. It has happened with ask, where some English speakers today say axe.
Happened with iron, which still is spelled like iron, and we've transposed it. And is this then a case of not just metathesis, but R metathesis? Because R loves to twiddle.
So it's Lupracan is a metathesis of Old Irish lucorpan. And corp is
body. What's loop?
So this is lu, small. So it's having
body.
little weight, lay.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah. So they're not related, but they do look a bit alike. And I thought actually Ben was going to go down that path of like, oh, those people that we have put far away and are strange. Maybe they have magical abilities.
Yeah. Is that where you went?
I was thinking maybe it's
but it's not.
maybe it's a curse that somebody like that could give you.
True.
Right?
Also very good.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for that. Okay, give me a second. I just gotta.
I love pigs are great. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. A lot of, I think in this regard, your TikTok feed and my TikTok feed is somewhat similar in that we get quite a lot of animal content, and I am always here for when it is like pig and boar related things.
I shook my head and then I remembered that I do actually get a lot of cows.
But you don't get like cats and dogs and pets and stuff?
Oh, yeah. Okay, that's just base level internet fare. You get cats and dogs. And then I get goats.
See, I used to think that, but I'm wondering, Hedvig, if you and I, as deep cat lovers, are like, we're doing that thing where we're like, everyone smooches their pet on the face, right? Like it's it's that thing is going on, which by the way, I don't smooch my cats on the face because I don't either. I don't want that hair in my mouth.
Okay. I'm running out of battery.